Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Real Talks. I'm your host, David Steele. I hope everybody had a fantastic weekend and did a lot of cool stuff. There was a great movie that came out in which I talked about in a spoiler cast. So, we'll get to that much later because that did huge numbers. And so, speaking of numbers, today is going to be a little bit different. So today is June 5th, and I did this last year, so I called this a mid-year review. Okay, so up until this point, we've had a lot of movies come out over the past 6 months, and I want to really talk about exactly what um, what really worked, what films just absolutely blew up the box office, and then what films really kind of floundered, and maybe why they floundered, and you know what could be corrected. And then tomorrow, what I'm going to do is, so we're only going to do January through June up to this point. Um, excuse me. So January through June. So tomorrow, um, and we're going to talk about the whole month of June today. And then tomorrow, what we're going to do is I'm going to actually talk about July through the rest of the year. What films we have to look forward to, because there is a ton of stuff out there. And it's this is that we're so blessed as far as movie fans. There is so much stuff out there, and guys, I'm not even talking about streaming. There is stuff on streaming right now that is fantastic that I just don't even cover because there is so much stuff. So that's going to be the basis of this show today. And I got to be honest with you, there's going to be a lot of numbers in here because I've always said this. Okay, this particular so Hollywood is a business. You got to call it what it is. Okay, it is a money making machine business that over the years, we haven't had such. The last year went over double digits as far as billions of dollars was 2019, and of course that was the year of Avengers Endgame. So we had a couple $1 billion. And when I say this, guys, let me preface it by saying this: just because you don't make $1 billion doesn't mean you're a lousy film. Okay, that I'm not saying that whatsoever in any way, shape, or form. So because it's all about return on investment, right? If you invest so much in something, you want to get a return on investment plus some. So, look, Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, okay, which a lot of, I thought it was an average, good film. I haven't seen it since, but maybe it's worth a rewatch. Almost made $1 billion, okay? And then you have another amazing film that was held out for a couple years in Top Gun Maverick, made, $1.5 billion. Nobody saw that coming. Nobody saw that coming. So, it really depends on, just because you don't make $1 billion doesn't mean you're a bad film. And we've already had one that's done it this year. Okay. And we have another one which I'll be talking about a little bit later on, that I think has the potential. And, so it's going to be interesting to see. So, anyways, let's get started. So I just wanted to give everybody a taste of what's ahead. So let's get started. So the first film I'm going to talk about actually was released in January, or not January, but December of last year. And you say, well, that shouldn't count, right? True. However, the numbers did come over into January. And I'm talking about Avatar: The Way of Water. This movie is one of the 3 or 4 movies over the past, I would say, 3 or 4 years, okay, to really have what we call, quote, legs. And that is a film that will just last and last and last and last. And this came out right in the middle of December. And you got to understand something, too. This had been a film that had been 15 years in the making, almost. Okay. So It was really 14, but nonetheless, 08, 09. Okay, so it had been a long time in the making, and there had been rumors about it, and there had been talk about it, and there had been innuendo about it, and say, oh, they're going to make the next Avatar, and then it was shut down for years. And it was one of those things where, are they ever going to do another one? Because you got to understand something. James Cameron, when he makes films, okay, he just doesn't make them for the average moviegoer, run of the mill. I mean, he does amazing. I mean, when we talk about greatest directors of all time, um, I mean, you have your Spielberg and Scorsese; those are locks all day long and twice on Sunday. Coppola is there. It could be he could be in the conversation. I mean, everybody talks about. I mean, The Godfather, The Godfather 2. I love Dracula personally, but Cameron, not only can he make incredible films, but there's story behind them. And so that being said, you take a look at all of the films really that he's done over the past, I would say, 15, 16 years, right? Okay. I mean, it goes all the way back to 97 with Titanic. Nobody had ever seen anything like that. For years and years and years, that film had been the quintessential benchmark. Not only because it won 10 or more Oscars, I mean, it was all technical, but still, it was the benchmark. It was visual effects, too. It was what he was able to do and how he was able to do it. That being said, going back to 97, and he had, I mean, you look at the time frame, it was 97 to 08 between Avatar. That's a big, big gap. I mean, there are a lot of directors that would have made, I don't know, 2 or 3 films in that span. But when he came out with Avatar, the original Avatar in 08, okay, it blew everybody away. It was like, holy shit, what is this? What is he done? And that's why it blew up. And I mean, you were immersed in this world. It was a completely different technology. So that had held its ground for many, many, many years. And then, you have Marvel come along and everything else. And then, of course, but Cameron had been I won't say sitting on this, he had been perfecting this. And of course, last year when we had the trailer finally came out, and they're like, oh my God. And everybody was, they were in frenzy because they're like, we're going to really get it. It wasn't just innuendo. It wasn't just a rumor. And then they see the trailer and they're like, okay, this is amazing. But there was so much expectation for this film. They said, this better blow everybody away. And it did. It did. And so not only did it blow everybody away, it came out at the perfect time. And that's why I was able to sustain for as long as it did. And right now, currently, as I'm recording this, it is the number 3. Think about this, guys. He has 2 of the 3 top all-time grossing films. Between the 2 films, he's made almost $5 billion. That's insane. So Avatar is the Way of the Water really just totally ruled the month of January for 2023. So here are a couple of the numbers real quick. It made, $134 million opening weekend. And partially because there was a lot of anticipation for it. Everybody wanted to see it. It was like, okay, here we go. This is really going to be the end all be all. Nobody really thought he had 3 and 4 and 5 planned down the road. And that's when he talked about it, because he kind of private guy, he didn't really like talking about it. Anyways, so he made $134 million, as I said. The next weekend, it made $63 million. And that's it's about a 50%, it's about a 55% drop, but nobody was worried about it. Okay. Avatar: The Way of Water had basically, it had something. It was repeat viewings. It was, because don't forget, guys, it was a 3-hour movie. It was 3 hours and 10 minutes. That's a long movie. Okay. I mean, in the last 5 or 6 years, okay, we've had, Avengers Endgame be 302. You had Babylon be over 3 hours. You had, Oppenheimer is going to be 3 hours coming out in July. You have all these movies coming out or have come out that were 3+ hours. So there's something to be said there, but the story was to be told. And for me, there's two things that you really look at when it comes to cinema, okay, and comes the box office and money and everything else for this. The first thing is the weekday, right? Because I'm guilty of it, and a lot of people are guilty of it too, and say, well, it only made this much. But here's the thing. We always talk about it, and it's always Friday, Saturday, Sunday. For me personally, okay, it's about what is it doing for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, because that's really where it's at, okay? Because people go to the theater every single day. They go to the theater every single day. And, we only talk about it through the weekend because that's when everybody, goes to see it or it's reviewed or anything else. So in the first week alone, Monday through Thursday, it made $63.5 million, which is incredible. Okay. In the second week, it made $97 million. So you're talking about a 33% increase during the week. During the week. So, it's just incredible to so in January. So let's talk about January. Let's talk about January of 2023 and moving forward. In January of 2023, on the weekend, it made $222 million, which obviously was the big weekend, okay, which won the month, okay, hands down, and twice on Sunday. But if you look at during the week, once again, it made the first week, it made $70 million. The second week, it made $14 million. The third week, it made $27 million. And the fourth week, it made $6.4, but it had been out for so long. The budget of this movie, and we always talk about budgets and everything else, and I do too, okay, because the budget is part of, ROI and return on investment and everything else. It was $350 million. Now, obviously, you see where the money went because it was the effects, okay? And the effects were that good that, so, and, he used motion capture and CGI and just, it was unbelievable. 90% of the movie, you were there on the planet. And yes, you had some other scenes, with human to human, but it was unbelievable. But it's one of those things where Avatar just crushed. And so some of the big numbers all time, okay? And this is where, because of the legs of the film, because of everything else that it did, so obviously, so let me talk about let me talk about some of the final numbers of this because I think it's worthwhile, right? Okay. This movie finished, okay, domestic. It finished with $684 million. Now, put that in perspective for a minute. That was seventh all time. Seventh. Domestic here in the States. There's only been a couple of movies that are ahead of it, okay? Force Awakens, not Jurassic World. Definitely Force Awakens is. Black Panther made $700 million. So it was 4 or 5 slots or a few slots away from that. Internationally, $1.6 billion, third all time. Okay. And then it finished all time, as I said, number 3. Okay. And of course, the only 2 films ahead of that are Avengers Endgame and Avatar. And Avatar made 2.1, and Endgame, I think, Avatar is number 1 and Endgame is number 2. But it's just an incredible thing to see, and how it did it. So, as I said, the reason why I'm putting this in January of this year is because I'm going to compare it to this. It was like Spider-Man No Way Home. When Spider-Man No Way Home opened, okay, it not only had, I mean, not only was a fantastic movie and everything else, but it had legs, and it carried over into the beginning of 2022, and that's why that movie dominated for so long until you had something else come out. And I mean, it really took 6 weeks, 6.5 weeks, almost 7 weeks, and just stayed. I mean, this movie even went up as far as percentage. Okay, this movie made, because there was nothing else out really. There was really nothing else out to really give it any competition. Um, so it was one of those things where Avatar just completely dominated, everything for several weeks. And why it did is because it had, the themes of, family and everything else, and of course the effects. I mean, and of course, as we all know, it won best visual effects at the Oscars. And I mean, that was a no-brainer. That was an absolute no-brainer. So, anybody that was nominated in that category, you kind of feel bad because you knew where it was going to go. And anyways, guys, what do you think about Avatar: The Way of Water and the numbers of it? And I covered it here on the channel for months and months and months. I mean, crossing all these thresholds and all these benchmarks and all these, records. What did you think of the film? How many times did you see the film? Did you see it in IMAX? Did you see it in 2D? The only time I saw it was in 3D. How many times did you see the film? Leave me your thoughts down in the comments, and I'm going to get back to everybody. Okay. So let's move on. So that was really December and January. Okay. So this movie really dominated up until that point, until there was another film that came out in February. In February, this is the one everybody was looking forward to because it was a Marvel film and everything else. And I'm talking about Quantumania. People were counting down to this movie not because they were tired of Avatar, because they were in anticipation of what had actually happened in the previous Marvel movie. And so this in itself was a big budget film. And I got to say, this, when I saw it personally and I put up my review and everything else about this, it really was underwhelming. I mean, it was underwhelming and you can only compare. Okay, let me be frank about something. You can only compare this Marvel movie to the other two Ant-Man movies. You say, well, it's not as good as Black Panther or Civil War. You can't really do that because they're not the same character. Okay, all of that being said, so February. This came out in February, in the middle of February. Okay. Hello, Metal. How are you? So what ended up happening was this came out and Avatar had really run out of gas by that point. And so this opened and it only had $106 million. And the budget of this movie was over 200. And the fact that we saw Kang, okay, now truth be told, I never watched Loki. From what I understand, he was in Loki, and he wasn't physically in Loki, but he was referenced several times over. So when we get to see him in the quantum realm, you're like, okay, this is going to be interesting. So yeah, this had a budget of $200 million, and this is one of Marvel's missteps that's really, it's tough because I don't know. I really didn't care for the film. I thought it was an average film. I understand why they were trying to do what they did because the last phase, okay, really, it wasn't lackluster, but it was definitely interesting because it was a lot of introductions, right? I mean, you had Shang-Chi, you had the Eternals, you had, I mean, everybody, I think, for the most part, can say No Way Home is like the perennial, one of the great films of that phase. Ant-Man, so when Kang comes into Ant-Man, okay, we find out he's Kang, and we find out what this movie's about. And then there were just a lot of problems with it. Now, I will say, I thought Majors was really, really good, even though the film kind of stumbled a lot. Um, whether it was Bill Murray's, cameo there and how he turns or whatever else. Um, I thought the best scenes, personally speaking, were the Kang and Michelle Pfeiffer's character. Now, one of the main reasons why I think this was a problem was because that you had look, the title was supposed to be Ant-Man and the Wasp, right? So you're thinking, oh, okay, she's going to be with Ant-Man, and that wasn't the case at all. They were separated for almost 2/3 of the movie until the third act. That being said, I'm not going to go and bore you guys with it, but it only made $106 million opening weekend, which, by the way, when we look at all of the opening weekends for all of these Marvel films over the past 15 years, this ranks 18th. This is the number 18th largest opening, and it barely got over the $100 million mark. So, it's one of those things where it's like, and you knew there was going to be problems with it. So, there was a big thing about the actress that played Cassie. I didn't mind her. She was good. She wasn't great. I mean, as I said, I think Majors was the best part of this film. So yeah, it opened to 106, okay, and then it went on a second weekend. It dropped like a rock. Okay. It only made $32 million, and it dropped 70%. Think about that. Think about that for a minute, guys. It dropped 70% in 1 week. So, I mean, there haven't been that many films that do that, and it was one of the biggest drops you had seen of a Marvel film in a long time. And that's when you knew it was in trouble. And then the third weekend it only made a little under $13 million, and it was like, okay, we need to just write it home. This only stayed at number one for 11 days. February 17th to the 28th. That's it. And, it finished with just under $500 million total worldwide. Okay. Hey, Dad, how are you? I was just talking about, so today's stream is more of a box office stream and what everything was doing. I was just discussing Ant-Man, but the fact that this dropped off like a rock really had a lot of problems for Marvel. And the thing is, Majors was at his height at this point, because a lot of people said the same thing, and it was, the film wasn't that good, but I really enjoyed Jonathan Majors. And of course, he had another film coming out the next month, which we'll get to in a few minutes, and he was really good in that too. And then all hell broke loose for him. But Marvel has a series, so it finished it was the 18th largest, and it was the 22nd worldwide film of all of the films. It was one of the lowest, and there's a lot of questions that have to be asked. Okay. What do they do about Kang is the number one thing. Number two, where do they go from here? There is a lot of things to get to, but this was the film that a lot of people were looking forward to because Kang was going to be in it. Don't forget, guys, the first time we saw Thanos was in the fifth film, right? In the Avengers, with that cutscene. What Marvel was trying to do was change it up and say, we need to bring the big bad out now, because the reception for Phase 4 wasn't that good. And what ended up happening was it kind of blew up in their face. And now they're in a real dilemma because of what happened with Jonathan Majors. So, yeah, I mean, I think that they have a lot of issues. And I think that, it's one of those things where what do you do and how do you do it? And I think that, you know, it's going to be it's going to be interesting to see what happens um, down the road and how it's done. So let's move on. I'm just gonna bear with me, guys. Um, so let's move on real quick. So Ant-Man is one of those that really didn't do well, and we all know that. So now we're gonna go into March. Okay, so everybody was after that one. Everybody was kind of like, okay, Ant-Man's done. What's the next big thing up? Okay, and so I actually did it on the channel, guys. You can go back and watch the first two, and um, I did a Creed rewatch. So Creed was the number. So this was the actual film that I think everybody was looking forward to as well, because for a couple of reasons. Okay, number one, it was Michael. Thank you. Just lost his train of thought. It was Michael B. Jordan's directorial debut. Okay, everybody had seen what he did in the first two Creed movies, and they were really like, oh, I can't wait for the third one. And then when he announces that he's going to direct it, okay, that's a big step. Okay, it's one thing to actually um, be in the film and be the lead actor. It's another thing to actually direct the film. So, as I said, I went to go see Creed 3 and I did a whole spoiler cast on that. And I loved it. I absolutely adored it. And so Dad says here, Creed 3 was great. The whole Rocky Creed universe are some nice films. Yes, they are. Yes, they are. And I still think, I mean, it's funny because every time I talk about Creed or think about Creed, there's one movie I always go back to, and that's Bridge of Spies. So anybody who remembers back in 2015, Sylvester Stallone was in the original Creed, and he was nominated for an Oscar. And he had won the Golden Globe that year, and he had won the Critics' Choice that year. And a lot of when you looked at the other people that were nominated, okay, you said, "Oh, this looks pretty good. Like Stallone's actually going to get an Oscar." And so it was, it was. First of all, let me go on by saying I love the movie. I thought it was really fun. I thought that the chemistry was still there. It was twice as hard for him, obviously, because he would have to act and direct, and it was his directorial debut, as I said. So a little about the numbers about this. It had a $75 million budget, okay, and it opened to $58 million, which was very, very big back then. I mean, not back then. I mean, we're only talking 3-4 months ago, but it was big because everybody wanted to see. Creed 2 was good, but it wasn't great. It was actually directed by the guy that Scott Capult Jr. Okay, and it was okay, but it wasn't great. And everybody had said, well, the Stallone factor wasn't there. That could have been it, but it still did really well for the numbers. Okay, you're talking about a first-time director. You're talking about a big name. There's something to be said about that. So overall, worldwide, okay, it made a little under $275 million. That's not bad for a Creed movie, okay? And I think that it's really, and don't forget, guys, because of this, okay, Amazon is now going to develop as what they're calling the Creed verse and all of these different stories and all of these different things. And Michael B. Jordan's going to have a hand in this. I got to say that the girl that played the actress that played their daughter was incredible. She was so good. And, anybody who has seen a film um, knows that, it was just a really good. The fact that they actually got an actress who was actually hard of hearing and deaf, and they, the signing and everything else, it was a great thing to see. I can't wait to see what they do with this because I think it's going to be fabulous. I've always said if they wanted to make another film, because look, at the end of Creed 3, okay, they kind of left it a little open ended. Okay, he goes in, Donis goes in and apologizes to, um, his friend. And then basically they kind of left it open to, like, she was in the ring, shadow boxing or whatever. I would love to see them try to do, if they're going to make a fourth installment. Okay, by the way, right now this is Michael B. Jordan's franchise. Make no mistake about that. I would love to see them have to, where he trains her, because you saw that scene, like, you know, at the gym where she was watching his fights, and she was talking to her about it and everything else, and like the mother, Tessa Thompson, played by Tessa Thompson, didn't want her to do that, but they finally embraced it. I would love to see something like that down the road, and that would be an amazing journey. And you want to talk about a strong female character, that would be the quintessential strong female character. um I think it would be fantastic, but we'll see what they do with it. I mean, all the Creed verse, it's in development right now. I'm really curious to see how they manage it, and you know, um, anything they do, anything they do, it I think is going to be great, because you're going to have Michael B. Jordan involved, you're going to have Tessa Thompson involved, and you know, it's just going to be fabulous. I think, okay, if you really wanted to, you could actually do like a little series first, okay, about the daughter, and then have in the next film have her be the the one that Donis trains, and then you have a whole other thing, you know. Um, but yeah, I love Creed 3. Creed 3, while it didn't make a whole lot of money and blow up, it still did very well for what it was compared to the other movies. I mean, once again, like I said, you had a first time director too. And truth be told, that has something to do with it, because it's one of those things where when people make the directorial debut, they have to really knock it out of the park, because it's a first impression, right? And it's like, okay, if this doesn't work, then you're only as good as your last movie, right? So that being said, it's one of those things. If you're as good as your last movie and this is it, and now they're going to start developing all this stuff, people are chomping at the bit to see what happens with Creed. So yeah, so Creed is a phenomenal franchise and film and everything else, and it stayed number one. I mean, March was packed, and we're going to get to a couple of these other ones here in a minute. Um, March was packed. So the next film, okay, and one of the next films that came out, and I'm going to so one of the next films that came out was another installment um, of a franchise that had been, God, it's 96 is when it began, and they had done several films over the course of several different years. And you got to remember at the time, okay, you were talking about like Final Destination and everything else, and I'm talking about Scream 6. Scream 6 was interesting. Now, because it was one of those franchises that I won't say cheap, so it was relatively cheap, okay? It had a $35 million budget, which is very low, okay? And it ended up making almost $170 million worldwide, which is incredible. It made just over 100 here in the States. You go, well, that's not that good. Yeah, it really is, because so here's the thing. Jenna Ortega. Okay, everybody knows her. The big thing. Okay, everybody knows her from Wednesday, the the um the show on Netflix. Okay, and she was in this. You had a couple other people coming back. You had I believe Nev Campbell came back. You had Hayden Panettiere come back. So you had a couple of people come back that were with the original franchise. Now, Drew Barrymore did not come back, but she really liked the film when she said she saw it. So Jenna Ortega was, the actress in the moment. Um, and Dad says here, I honestly don't know who the Ghostface killer. I honestly did not know who the Ghostface killers were until the end. I usually can figure it out early on. Yeah, and some people are very good at that. And that's the whole thing. That's the whole shroud of the mystery, right? Um, is that they want to be able to give you enough, rope to think, oh, okay, I know exactly who it is. And then they pull off a fast one on you and go, whoa, I didn't see that coming. And that's when the twist really comes into play, right? And if you can get, that's the thing, if you can get who it's going to be early on, then it's no fun, right? It's no fun. But if they pull a fast one on you and go, oh, whoa, I didn't see that coming at all, then you enjoy it that much more. But yeah, so this wasn't like a huge film as far as making a lot of money, but for what it was, I mean, when you have a $35 million film for a budget and you gross $170 million, you made almost 4 times your money. That's fabulous. And even I mean, the budget, not the budget, but the marketing of this film wasn't that great. I mean, it wasn't that big. So even if the budget for the marketing was, let's say, $10 million, $15 million, you're talking about a $50 million film. So, I mean, you've almost made 3 times your money. So it really, it's a win. And now they're coming out with another, there are rumors. I know, I think it's been confirmed that they're already in development on their next movie. So, if you can make movies on the cheap and on the low, for 35, 40, $50 million. I mean, we were just talking about Creed. That was a $75 million budget. That was a big budget, but so, I mean, they spent twice as much on that film as they did this. So there's something to be said about this. And this is when you're talking about return on investment and making all this money and everything else. There's something to be said about that. So Scream 3 was, I mean, I never saw it. I mean, I like the genre. I mean, I have certain films I really enjoy, but this just wasn't the slasher flick. It just wasn't one of my go-to movies. But it's always going to be interesting to see who it is, who the next Ghostface is, and how they tease it and everything else. So, and the marketing, speaking of marketing, what they did with this movie was genius. Like they had people at baseball games wearing, the Ghostface, or they had people. I mean, I saw a video recently about how they had people in the Empire State Building. I mean, they were just popping up at random places. And it was reminding you of that. And I think that's one of the, I would say, Mount Everest of like slasher films. I mean, for me, it's like Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street and, Halloween. But this is right up there. This is top tier on the second level for that. And it's been around for 25 years. So, yeah, I think Scream 3 really, it did it for what it was. And that was the important thing. It didn't try to be more than what it was. For what it was, it worked really, really well. So let's move on to another film that happened in March. As I said, March was packed. I mean, March, we actually really started to see everything come into play in March. And so we're now going to a film that really there was a lot of problems with. And I would say it's difficult to make sequels. I know that. Okay. Not that I'm a filmmaker myself, but I do know that, as I've said, there's only a handful of sequels that are able to do it, especially comic book movies, right? And I'm talking about Shazam. This movie. So Dad says, but the best marketing for a horror film was Smile, having random people show up at base. Yeah, absolutely. No doubt. No doubt, Dad. No doubt in my mind. Yo, Dave, you got to go watch Loki. We should do a watch party before season 2. That's a possibility. Yeah, absolutely. I'll definitely consider that, Metal, because we don't have another. It's interesting because we don't have another. So it's coming out in October. So don't forget, we got Secret Invasion coming, in a couple weeks. I'm going to be doing that. So, and I'll tell you what, if I can find time to do it, absolutely. Because the thing is, I'm going to be so packed and so busy for the next few months. I mean, and that's why I'm doing this today. Secret Invasion is coming out. Can't wait. That looks so good. Yeah, it looks really, really good. And you have Amelia Clark in there, and Samuel L. Jackson's coming back, and you've got, Rhodey, and yeah. So absolutely. So I'll tell you what, if I can find the time, because don't forget, I've got to do the videos for June for the Patreon. I already did the perfect movie for June. Okay. And that's The Dark Knight. But we've got all these movies. We got Transformers this week. We got The Flash next week. Okay. We've got a little bit of a lull for the 23rd. Actually, that's the first week of Secret Invasion. And then the next week is Indiana Jones. So, I'll see what my schedule looks like. No promises, but I'll definitely see what my schedule looks like. And if I can, if we don't do a watch party, I'll watch it on my own. That way, because the second season's coming out in October. So definitely. So let's move on to the other film that was an absolute disaster for DC. And I had said quite a long time ago that this came out actually the third week, the second or third week of March. And I said that if this particular film was going to be a litmus test or a test for The Flash, which is coming out in a couple of weeks, which, guys, I will be covering on the channel. I will be doing the spoiler cast for it, so don't worry about that. But I said that this film was going to be a little bit of a litmus test. And this film was an unmitigated disaster for a number of different reasons. And it was, so first and foremost, I mean, just by just by the numbers itself, okay, it had a budget of $125 million. Now, that's not bad for this kind of movie. They bumped it up because of the success of the first film and everything else, and that's understandable. It made, listen to this, it made only $30 million opening weekend. That's it. Dad says, I didn't even go see it. I'll see it when it comes to streaming. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people did not see this film in theaters. Okay. It only made $30 million when it came to opening weekend for this movie. Okay. And it only finished, listen to this, $57.6 million. So it made almost 55% of the money in the first week. That's crazy. It only made $133 million worldwide. I mean, you want to talk about a movie that lost money. It was just an unmitigated disaster because, of course, this is where The Rock came into, first really came into play and said, I want my own sequel, and, Black Adam, and I didn't want to be in Shazam. And, because from what I understand, the original end credit scene of Shazam The Rock was supposed to be in it, and he just said no, I don't want to do that, and it completely changed everything. And so then you had, it was just, Zachary Levi came on, and there was rumors that he was going to get cut and everything else, and it just didn't work. And it just didn't work, and it was just bad all the way around. It was bad, and I'm not even talking about the effects. So Dad says you could really tell where DC was going with this film. How can they continue with these characters to have a future? The post-credit scene was the same from the first. Dialogue in the movie was cringe. Look, I don't know. To be absolutely frank and honest with you, I don't know. Because here's the thing. This is not one of their Trinity characters, okay, if you will. I mean, it's not Superman, it's not Batman, it's not Wonder Woman. But beyond that, it's the story. I mean, it begins and ends with me with the story and how it's done. And, I mean, maybe it was lazy script writing or whatever, but I'll say this, to your point, the numbers reflected it. Okay? The numbers reflected it. This wasn't one of those divisive movies that people would say the movie was, really, critics and people would say this is really bad, where the critics would say this is really bad, but it made a whole bunch of money. Okay? Because there are movies out there like that. Okay? That being said, if a movie doesn't work, it just doesn't work. And it didn't work. It didn't work. And that's where I think that, people really, I've said it before, it's so hard. It's so hard to make a sequel. It's so hard to make a good sequel. And it's even harder to make a great sequel. And when the expectation is there to make a great sequel, okay, and it falls flat on its face, then you know what? I mean, I gotta believe that. I gotta believe Shazam is done. I gotta believe Shazam is done because it just doesn't make any sense. If they can't invest Warner Brothers in DC, when I say they can't invest any more money in this and expect to turn a profit. So I think what you'll see, okay, is I think they'll just put it to bed. I think they'll just put it to bed and they'll just say, okay, we're done with it because nobody will go see it. As I said, you're only as good as your last movie. Nobody will go see the next movie. Okay? So they need to just put this away for a few years. And look, everybody has a bad day at the office, so to speak. Okay? Chalk this one up to, just everything being bad. So I think that at the end of the day, they're not going to make another movie involving Shazam. And that's fine. I'm fine with that because if they, they're not going to lose all that money. They just don't want to. And that's what, that's what I keep reiterating about this. When you're making millions of movie, hundreds of, $100 million or $125 million, and you barely make it back, he says, I would have rather seen Batgirl than this. And that's the thing too. You bring up a good point. A lot of people, okay, a lot of people were pissed off that Batman or Batgirl got next. A lot of people, so, I mean, it's one of those, and I think at the end of the day, this movie's just going to be forgotten. This movie's just going to be forgotten. This is, the good, the bad, the ugly. This is going to be one of the bad movies of the year. And it was. People have already forgotten it. And I can't imagine it's going to get that much traction on streaming. So, yeah, I mean, they don't, people will not come. I would rather watch Morbius over, to be honest. Yeah, yeah. I mean, so and that just tells you the benchmark, right? Morbius. I mean, talk about forgettable films. All right, but let's go to another film that wasn't forgettable, and it did really well. And because it did really well, Lionsgate is actually going to be making another installment, and it really blew up. And this was one of the last things for the month of March. That was John Wick 4. John Wick 4 did great numbers. Okay, I mean, this movie had a $90 million budget, yes, but it was just it almost made $74 million opening weekend. It almost right, So of the three films, okay, it opened for the most, okay, and it was the second biggest film of the month of March, and that's huge. So it made $73.8 million opening weekend, which is really good. I mean, not because John Wick 3 did really well, so they wanted to see another installment. So they made this. It had a $90 million budget, like I said, but that's okay. It made its money back plus some. The best damn action movie ever made, in my opinion. Yeah. Yeah. Keanu Reeves. It's interesting, right? Because Keanu Reeves, when you think about it, I mean, he is one of the best low-key action stars we've had over the past 25 years. Think about it. I mean, he was in Speed, right? With in 95, 96, he was in Speed. Okay. Then a couple years later, he goes and he does a little movie called The Matrix. Okay. And that movie revolutionized effects in the industry. And then, so he's in that. And then, like 3 or 4 years later, guess what? He does a little movie called John Wick. And it blows up. And, when you get to a point where you've done two major franchises like that, you can do whatever you want. And so, I mean, think about it like this. He only did, and by the way, I mean, he's done other little movies like Hardball and Sweet November and everything else because he wanted to, change it up. Don't forget, this guy was in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure all those years ago. He has a comic book out called Berserker. It's really good. You should read it. Oh, okay. I'll look into that. Definitely. I mean, he's a phenomenon, and he's in his 50s. And I'm not saying anything about his age because I'm 47, okay? But what he does and how he does it's just incredible. So, yeah, this movie just absolutely blew up for the month of March. Opened a little less than $74 million, okay? It made $432 million worldwide. Okay. 180, almost 187 here in the States, and the other 245 overseas. I can't wait to see if. So they've already said that they're going to develop that. So he's the best Constantine? Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. I'd be curious to see if his popularity is through the roof right now. His popularity is through the roof. I love a little movie he did back in the 90s. It's one of those cult films. Not cult films, like cult classic films, like Rocky Horror Show. It's a little film he did back, and I love the cat. I love the movie. It's called The Devil's Advocate. If you haven't seen it and you really want, it's a bad movie at its core, okay? But if you want a really fun, campy time, go watch The Devil's Advocate, okay? Keanu Reeves plays a lawyer from the South. I think it was Louisiana or Mississippi. And Charlize Theron's in it. And so they moved to New York. And so, because he gets a job offer from big movie. Yes. Okay. So you've seen it. And Pacino plays the devil. And the last 10 minutes of that movie is epic. And yeah, I love that movie. I love that movie. Best camp movie history. I've seen it 3 times. Yeah, I love that movie. And it's so, and the cast is big, right? I mean, you had Keanu Reeves, you had Charlize Theron, you had Al Pacino. I mean, good stuff. You have the guy that actually played Coach, the lead and played in the television series Coach was in it too. But yeah, it was. I love that movie. But John Wick 4 is an amazing franchise that is just it always pulls numbers. It always pulls numbers, and the one thing about this film, because it is an action film and everything else, obviously, the one thing that if you're able to really hit on and touch upon are those shots. Okay, I mean, like this shot here. I mean, he's sitting at the table. You got the Eiffel Tower in the distance. It is just incredible, and those are the shots you go, yes, those are the money shots right there. Um, of course, you got to have the action and the guns and the explosions. But those, if you're able to mix that up, you've done your job. And yeah, the John Wick 4 just it is it's an amazing film, and for what it was, and once again, it knew what it was. Yeah, exactly. Cinematography medal is the cinematography. He says the cinematography. Yes, wholeheartedly agree with you. It is amazing because when you're able to mix up the cinematography like that, you've done your job. Um, Another film that really, and I'm going to be doing it later on this year for perfect movies, is Skyfall. Roger Deakins. The cinematography of that movie is just out of bounds good, and he is just an incredible cinematographer. So that is John Wick, and that is the month of March. So as the month of March was winding down, there was a little movie that came out that just did kind of well, and I'm talking about Super Mario Brothers. Super Mario Brothers just absolutely went off the charts. And so he says, did you hear that Marvel turned down the John Wick director? I don't know what movie it was, but they turned him down. Yeah, I mean, I suspect that you know, I suspect that he's going to come back and make another John Wick movie. So, you know, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And that's you know that's what it was. So I don't know. And I think the other thing too is the it was probably I mean I don't know this to be true or false. There's probably too much of a price tag too. So, but so let's talk about this movie because this. I mean, at the top of the show, okay, I talked about how um, it's not always about making $1 billion, right? And a film if because look, Multiverse of Madness made almost. I mean, I think it made like 977 million dollars. But it really, at its core, was not a good movie. It was average, but it was the title was a little misleading and everything else. That being said, this movie came out, and it was an amazing movie for a number of reasons. Number one, you had it; it was an IP everybody knew, right? I mean, everybody knows Mario. Okay, I mean he's been in the stratosphere, the zeitgeist of society for almost 40 years. Okay, I really remember the little Nintendo Entertainment System back in the day, and used to play Super Mario Brothers on that. Whether it was that or the Game Boy or whatever it is. So, I mean, you've got Mario Kart today, and Rock'em Sock'em Mario and everything else. So he's been in the zeitgeist. Number two, this movie was short. Okay, it was short, and that's important because at the end, and I'm not calling it a kids movie because it definitely wasn't a kids movie. Okay, and that's like Spider-Verse, and we'll get to that in a couple of minutes. but this at its core could be considered a kids movie, even though it's not. Okay, because it's animated. Because there are people out there that still consider animated films kids movies because of the generation they grew up with and everything else. Now, when you look at this, and this definitely tells you it's not an NOT not. um, it made $146 million opening weekend. Okay, 25% of its gross domestic. It was made on $100 million budget, so it already made its money back. Okay, and that's huge. This movie just so this is another movie I always talk about to have legs. Okay, it's like I bet if James Cameron wrote an animated movie, everybody would go to see it and not complain one bit. He did. I mean, animated. The thing about Cameron is this, and I said this at the top of the show. So Cameron is one of those. I mean, when you talk about best directors, and look, every film is subjective, and I always say that, but there are two names you can basically put on that list: Scorsese and Spielberg, hands down, twice on Sunday. Okay. Well, I wouldn't say it's animated, okay, but Avatar, The Way of Water. What I was going to get at is this, and it's not animated. I understand that. Okay. Here's the thing: that when Cameron makes movies, okay, he takes a break in between each one, big time break. I mean, you look at what he did with, you take a look at what he did with Titanic in '97, okay, and then Alita was, yeah, I mean, so Titanic was in '97. You had Avatar in 2009. He didn't make anything, okay, he didn't make anything, not to my knowledge at least. Then in 08, 09, we waited 13 years. And then, it was motion cap because the technology was there and he enhanced it and everything else. So you're starting to see. So Mario changed the game in a couple of different ways. Okay. So number one, it was short. Okay. Everybody knew Mario. Okay. Number two, okay, it was short. It was only 93, 94 minutes. Okay. So we're not talking about a very long film. Okay. Number three, the fact is that people, so as I said, it was one of those films that had legs. Okay. The fact is, people went to go back and watch it again and again and again and again. And, I have always said it's not about opening weekend is important, but it's about the second weekend. Okay. And because once the anticipation is over, okay, they'll say, oh, okay, that's it. No big deal. But if you get people to go back and see it again and again, okay, so this movie ended up with a 506, and this is adjusted for inflation, $566 million. Okay. And that's incredible. I mean, you take a look at, so one of the biggest movies of the year a couple years ago was Black Panther, and that made $700 million. So it was only really $140 million off that. This is the first movie and the only movie so far to break $1 billion this year. And that's huge just because it made so much money overseas. And, I think that it's incredible to see, how it's been, what's been going on. So, and here's a big thing. So I'm talking about all this and everything else. So we have a couple more movies to get to, but we have the whole month of May, really. But there's only been a couple movies to really dominate May. And that being said, this is just an incredible film all the way around. And I Yeah, I mean, it's awesome to see. And of course, and I think you guys have even told me and suggested it to me. I have no doubt that they're going to, number one, keep the same date with Easter, and number two, okay, they're going to build a whole universe around this. So they knew exactly what they were doing. Um, the other movie, and I don't have it pictured here, but the other movie I really want to touch upon too, that came out the same day, was Air. Air was an amazing film. Not because you had Matt Damon and Ben Affleck. First of all, the cast it was a big cast. You had Matt Damon, Ben Affleck, Jason Bateman. You had, a couple of other people, Viola Davis. I had always said, now I knew it was never going to be as big as Mario, okay, but I always said it was going to do quite a bit of money. And that being said, this is why. And look, this is now currently on Amazon. Okay. And it's one of those things where this movie made almost $90 million. It made its whole budget back. And I think there's something to be said there for what it was, and how it was. And, it was an amazing thing. So I want to move on real quick because that dominated all of April. That dominated all of April. Okay, made $1 billion. Okay, so now we're about a month away, and everybody was looking forward toward one movie to kick off the summer, and that was Guardians of the Galaxy. This movie just was incredible, and not only was it incredible, okay, it really, everybody had a feeling that James Gunn was going to finish this up properly, and he did. And this movie has made close to, well, as it stands today, at the time of this recording, okay, it's made. So here are the numbers, okay. So I've always said this, okay. And I keep going back to this, okay, because it's vitally important, okay. It's about the weekend. It's not about the weekend. It is about the weekend, but it's not all about the weekend, okay. The fact is that this movie, so it cost $200 million to make. I mean, it's Marvel. I mean, let's face it, right? But it's made $780 million worldwide. Okay. It opened to, let's see, it opened to almost 120 million. Okay. Which was incredible. And so it's the second biggest opening behind Mario. And that tells you something. This is the only other movie. I mean, now Spider-Verse is in that conversation. There's only been 3 movies this year. Think about this, guys. There's only been 3 movies this year to open to $300 million or $100 million. Think about that. Of all the movies I've covered so far, there's only been 3 movies to open to over $100 million. Guardians, Ant-Man, and Spider-Verse. That's it. What do they all have in common? The superhero movies. So, I mean, the fact is too that everybody knew James Gunn was going to do that well and everything else. So, as I said, it's number 2 behind Mario. Okay, it basically from May 5th to May 18th. Okay, made $234.5 million. That's incredible. That's incredible. And as it stands right now, okay, it's made $323 million domestic. So you want about a 50-50 split when you talk about these movies because you don't want it to be you want it to be about 50-50, 60-40 at the most. But yeah, I mean, it's out of sight. So it's just unbelievable in that way. And I think that you're going to see this continue over the course of the next, I don't know, few years. And that's why I always said too, it's always fascinating to see what like how Superman's going to do, because Superman is James Gunn. Um, but yeah, it's bear with me, guys. So did the stream stop? Uh, can anybody? Here we go. Thoughts on the news that confirm Machete is directing the Batman, the Brave and the Bold. Maybe those reports of the Flash being bad are exaggerated. Sorry for the sidetrack. No, that's okay. So I hadn't seen that. So that's interesting. That's breaking news to me, if you will. Yeah. Look, it's going to be interesting to see what happens, because, of course, he came out and said what he said about the Flash, and the movie hasn't even been released yet, and they may be the best thing in that film. Ezra Miller, I'm talking about. But for me personally, I think that he kind of put his foot in his mouth. Okay, he kind of put in his foot. Look, I don't think the Flash is bad. I don't think the Flash is bad. Here's the thing. You know exactly what you're getting with the Flash. You know exactly what you're getting with the Flash. And, I mean, the thing is that, I guess my thing is this. Machete, he needs to start really choosing his words more appropriately. Apparently, Flash 2 is already written, though. I don't know that to be true or false. Maybe he is, maybe it's not, and I doubt it. And I'll be honest with you, Dad, I can't see that. Only because they don't know what this one's going to do. And they don't even know if they bring Ezra back. So maybe it's true. I don't know. We'll see. But Guardians is just one of those movies in May that just blew up. And it's continuing to blow up. Kevin says, I hope people go see Pixar's Elemental in theaters, because my only concern going to wait for Disney Plus. Well, the other thing about that, Kevin, okay, is so the news came out just yesterday that 75 people were laid off from Pixar, including one of the people that really saved Pixar in itself. So I guess there had been some files erased for Toy Story 2. Somebody had it on their home drive. So basically they were able to save it. But that being said, it's going to be tough. So right now, box office projections for Elemental are not good. I've got to be honest. They're looking around $35-40 million. And they need a win after what happened with Lightyear. They really, I enjoyed Lightyear personally, but they need a win after that. But Guardians is just absolutely fantastic, and I want to go back and see it again. And it's still, and this is once again started out this summer, and Marvel's owned May for 15 years. So, but yeah, that's Guardians of the Galaxy, and it's just an incredible film. So now I'm going to move to a film that really, after Guardians came out, okay, it's one of those. Warner Brothers needs a comeback Barbie. Come back. Barbie will do okay at the box office. The Flash, people go see it. No, absolutely, no doubt. I think. Look, Barbie is. I'm still unsure about Barbie. I think that I mean, it's one of those things where you coming out the same day as another film is going to eat into your profits, no matter what genre it is. Okay, whether it is superhero, whether it is whatever, it's going to eat into your profits. and that's a big thing. And if it doesn't score opening weekend, what do you expect it to do? So I don't know. But no, the Flash, people will definitely go see the Flash in theaters. I'm not worried about that at all. So, but there is another. There was another movie that came out in May, and you know, um, so let me just see if I can find. Okay, so the movie that came out, okay, and really did well. I'm sorry about this, guys. Was The Little Mermaid. I'm just waiting for this to catch up. There we go. Sorry, guys. So, anyways, I wasn't able to see. Sorry, I wasn't able to load all the pictures up, so I was going to look for them. So basically, The Little Mermaid was another film that really, it was a $250 million film for Disney, and there had been a lot of chatter about it because, once again, this is another live action film that Disney was putting together because they had success with their other films. I mean, Lion King made over $1 billion. A lot of people enjoyed Aladdin. A lot of people enjoyed, some of the other films. So this has made some good headway. And I'm not so for opening weekend, it made $95 million, which is pretty remarkable. I mean, considering you had Guardians out and everything else. So the budget of this movie was $250 million. And as I said, now as of June 3rd, so these numbers obviously aren't final. It's made $326 million. So I've heard mixed reviews about it. Metal says, yeah. I mean, yeah. I personally have not seen it, so I don't know, but I have heard mixed reviews as well. So it will be interesting. I think Disney, don't forget, I think they went to the well once too often. That's what I think. I think they went to the well once too often, and they tried to make something that was really everybody loved, and it just kind of backfired in the face. So I don't know. But anyways, so I'm going to now, you guys bear with me. I'm going to load the other, let's see here. I'm going to load the other pictures on here. So this is one of the films that, and I didn't cover, I felt like they got drunk off of Lion King and Mulan. Yeah, absolutely. I'm in agreement with you, Metal, because it's too much. They're trying to, make more money when we already have the originals out. I mean, when I say the originals, I mean the animated films. People didn't want to see Little Women. I don't know about that. I mean, look, anybody on the right is always going to say that. And I'm not saying you are on the right, Kevin. I'm just saying that you're always going to have critics, no matter what the film is. Okay? It could be the lead actress is black. It could be that they were trying to get a cash grab. It could be anything else. Okay? Those people that are criticizing and they said they didn't want to see the film because the actress was black, that tells you something about them. Plain and simple. Plain and simple. I mean, they can't enjoy a film for what it is. Okay. And, I don't. I'm one of the few, and I hope there are people out there that watch me that can be able to separate the art from the artist. And that's what I'm doing with The Flash, to be honest with you. I'm separating the art from the artist. Okay. I'm still going to go see the film, but I'm going to enjoy it as a standalone film. Um, you know, so, anyways, so we had Fast 10 came out, and I don't have a picture for this, but I'll just briefly tell you what the numbers were because it's once again unmitigated disaster and what's happened with that. Uh, Fast X, okay, had a 340 million-dollar budget. Okay, it's made $600 million worldwide, but The Rock coming back, and then I just did a story last week about he's going to be getting another spinoff because look, The Rock is a comic book. He's a cartoon as far as I'm concerned. He's a cartoon, okay? And when he doesn't get what he wants, he doesn't act. He's a big cartoon. And when he doesn't get what he wants, I mean, look, Black Adam was an unmitigated disaster. Okay? It was an unmitigated disaster. He tried to bring Cavill back. He tried a coup with Warner Brothers in DC, and it blew up in his face. Then he tried to fudge the numbers for Black Adam to say, oh, it was better than it was, and that blew up in his face. Cavill left a show in which, granted, he was having problems with the writers, but he was the lead on. And then James Gunn and Peter Safran showed him the door, and now he's left out in the cold. I mean, now he's got his own thing over at Amazon. That's fine. But at the same time, so The Rock said, oh, okay, I'll go back to Universal. And he snuck his way in, okay, after several years of saying, I'll never do another Fast and Furious movie with Vin Diesel again. And guess what? He's doing a movie with Fast and Furious movie with Vin Diesel. And if nothing else, he's a liar. And at the least, he's a liar, okay? Because he said he would net, even if he's not on screen. So I don't know. I have my problems with him. I have my problems with him, and he cannot keep anything straight. This, he's like, so I just did a piece here in this last week saying that, so as I said, Diesel is going to produce, okay, and, it's just one of those things where the whole thing is just bad. So, okay. So I want to move on to a movie that, obviously just came out last week. It blew up. Okay. And I'm talking about Across the Spider-Verse. Across the Spider-Verse. So I went to go see this. I tweeted this out. I was going to go see it on Thursday, and something happened. So I ended up going to see. I wanted to see it in IMAX. I didn't get the chance. And then I went to go see it in 2D. And, my only regret was I didn't get to see this in 3D. It was unbelievable. It was unbelievable, and I want to go back to see it again in IMAX. It's just everything about this is fantastic, and yeah, So let me ask you guys this: did you happen to, or have you seen Across the Spider-Verse yet? And if so, did you like it? Asking you guys in the chat if you've seen it. So I think, Metal, didn't you tell me you were going to go see it and then you were going to watch the spoiler cast after? I think you might have actually come in and said that. But yeah, it's just, this movie was so much fun. it's for me, it's a lock to win Best Animation in next year's Oscars, um, because we only have a couple of animated films coming out, right? We've got Elemental coming out, of course. We've got Wish coming out at the end of the year. We've got the Kraken and the Mermaid coming out. Um, but I think that yeah, I think this is it's almost as good, if not better. The only little drawback, I would say, because I love the stuff between Gwen and him. Okay. And by the way, guys, don't go back and watch my spoiler cast. This is what I'm giving you right now is very abbreviated. Go back and watch that. That's my full thoughts about it. But I love this all the way around, and I mean, I loved all the spider people. I mean, they had the cameos, which I won't divulge in case you haven't seen it, but those were great. It just worked, you know. And so, as always said, and I continue to say it, okay, it's not about this weekend because we all know it's going to do it, but it's this upcoming weekend, the second weekend. Here's the thing. I don't know exactly what Transformers is tracking for, but let's say it's $60 million. Okay. I think that even if this takes a 50% hit, okay, and by the way, this made $120.5 million. Okay. So, I mean, it was a really, honestly, it was a big weekend for the box office, right? So, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse made $120.6 million. Little Mermaid made $41 million. Okay. And it went down 57%, which, I mean, that's about what you want. I mean, anything 60 and anything above 60 and you're in trouble. But that's still fantastic for what it is. And now we have Transformers coming out. Look, I think if Transformers is not up to snuff, you're going to see all those people the reviews are going to come out for Transformers, and people are going to say, I'm going to skip this. And then they're going to go back and watch Spider-Verse again. And if that happens, this is going to, continue on for the next couple of weeks, at least until The Flash comes out. The Flash is going to win. The Flash is going to be that second film that wins 2 weekends. I said it was 3, could possibly be 4. Guardians was the first, May 5th, May 12th. The Flash, okay, May 16th, May 23rd. You're going to have Indiana Jones win 2 weekends, okay, May 30th, and then the 4th. Says, I'm not going to go see the Transformer. I'm not going to lie. The Transformer cast looks amazing. I might have to see that movie twice. Yeah. I checked out a long time ago from the franchise. I'm going into this like I went into Fast 10. Okay, Metal, because my thing was Fast 10 was I just had to shut my brain off. That's what I got to do. I've got to just shut my brain off because these aren't like story worthy type. These are just rock'em sock'em blow. This is literally rock'em sock'em robots. So yeah, it'll be interesting. I want to go see that in IMAX if I can, just to see. I want to see the rest of the summer slate in IMAX if I can, just because it's better. So, but yeah, it looks good. And it's the first time we've had something like that in a while. Yeah, as far as that franchise goes, I haven't had a Transformer movie. Yeah. No, I think, and that's the thing. It's been what? 4 years, 5 years? The Last Night was the last film to come out. And it's been a while. So, yeah, I'm really interested in seeing that. But if that doesn't track well, you're going to see those people that were going to go see Transformers go see Spider-Verse. No doubt in my mind. And I really think it's either going to be neck and neck, or you could see Spider-Verse kind of edge out. So it's all going to depend on what happens this weekend. So, it's one of those things. But as far as numbers are concerned, so up to date right now, today, as I'm recording this to you, excuse me, there's been, so last year, okay, we had 496 releases, okay? And Hollywood, the box office, it made $7.3 billion. Now, when you look at what that did, okay, you had a couple of films that really, I mean, you didn't have a $1 billion film last year, domestic, okay? But so it was one of those things where, I mean, the top grossing film of last year, domestic, was Top Gun Maverick, and it made $718 million. Okay. And that, of course, went on to make $1 billion. Black Panther Wakanda Forever, made almost $440 million. Doctor Strange, and that nearly hit $1 billion. $411 million. Avatar The Way of Water made $400 million, which I covered at the top of the show. I mean, hell, even Thor Love and Thunder, which wasn't received that well, still made $343 million opening for the year. So as it stands right now, okay, we're about at the halfway point, okay? And we've got a ton of other movies coming out this summer, okay? We're at 3.6 billion, okay? And Mario is the only movie to hit $1 billion, okay? So as it stands right now, okay, Guardians is at 323, okay? The Super Mario Brothers these are all domestic, 566. Ant-Man and the Wasp, as I said, made $214 million domestic. The Little Mermaids made $186 million. John Wick 4, $186 million. Creed 3, $156 million. Fast X, $128 million. Across the Spider-Verse, of course. We can't really... That movie is probably going to... Right now, is probably going to be in the top 3 when all is said and done as far as domestic. Because Guardians is, at 323. And you got to figure that's going to fizzle out in the next couple weeks. And I think it's going to, Scream 6 at 108. Megan made almost 100. And that rounded off the top 10. So, look, I think that it's really going to be fascinating to see what happens moving forward and how it happens. Yeah. And so you got to remember, too. So Spider-Verse, this film here, has only been out 1 week. It's only been out 1 week. So, by the time this run is over, I think it will probably make somewhere in the neighborhood of $200 million, $220 million by the time it's done. And even, don't forget, guys, it's going to make a ton of money on streaming. Once this comes to streaming, by the end of the summer or August or September, this is going to make a lot of money. So, yeah, we've really been blessed with a lot of good films this summer and earlier this year and everything else. So it's going to be interesting. So tomorrow, what I'm going to do is, so I didn't do the whole year because it was just going to, so I've been going for about an hour and a half right now. So it'll be like a 3-hour stream. What I'm going to do tomorrow is I'm going to talk about films that we're going to have for the rest of the year. So June, we know we're going to have, this week is Transformers. Next week is The Flash. Okay. You're going to have a little bit of a break, and then you're going to have Indy. Okay. And then you're going to have, I blanked. Oh, you're really going to have, after Indy, you're going to have Mission Impossible. And then you're going to have here we go. So this is what I'm going to, so this was one of the old things, but it's still kind of current. So, well, so you're going to have all these films come out. And then at the end of the year, okay, you're going to have a ton of like really solid artistic films. You're going to have, so that this was going back a few months, but it's still relevant. So we've had all these movies, okay? We just had Across the Spider-Verse. I love that shot, by the way. So you're going to have Transformers next week, okay? Then you're going to have The Flash, which, everybody's looking forward to. Then you're going to have Dial of Destiny. Then, actually, this is the 12th. They moved it up. Mission Impossible. Then you're going to have Oppenheimer, the story I did, but it's pretty interesting. So there's actually a really interesting story. Two. Number one, the first story is that when this was delivered to theaters, okay, or is going to be delivered to theaters, this was 11 miles long. You can believe that, 11 miles long, because it was and weighed 600 pounds, because it was done all in IMAX, because it was specially made for IMAX. And the second story about this is that Tom Cruise is pretty upset, because this is actually going to be in IMAX for 3 weeks. And Mission Impossible is getting bumped from premium screens. So, it's Hollywood, and I get it. It is what it is. Mission Impossible will be fine, though. It will still turn a profit. And so that's it. Those are all the films for that. And then, not pictured there, of course, you have Barbie, you have, all those other films, Blue Beetle. So that comes out August. You have the TMNT movie, August 2nd. Blue Beetle comes out the 18th. And then, September 1st is The Equalizer 3. And then there are a lot of artistic films coming out at the end of the year. And I'll talk more about these tomorrow, but you have Wonka, the one with Timothée Chalamet. You've got Dune 2 with that cast is stacked. Timothée Chalamet, Zendaya, Oscar Isaac, Josh Brolin, Florence Pugh, Austin Butler. You've got, of course, Killers of the Flower Moon, the much anticipated Apple film. Leonardo DiCaprio, Robert De Niro, Lily Gladstone, Jesse Plemons, directed by Martin Scorsese. There's a ton of great films coming out, and we're going to talk all about those tomorrow. So really, we'll start August 2nd, and then we'll go for the rest of the year. I mean, we're not going to go through every single month, every single week of every single month, but the big ones. So yeah, can't wait for that. It's going to be a blast, because there's films on there that, even the smaller films look really good. Like, I'm an Equalizer fan myself, so I can't wait for September 1st, and Denzel finishing up that. But so that's going to be that. Couple of quick things. Mission Impossible. I'm going to sit down in the next couple of days, and I want to watch Mission Impossible 3. And I might even do that stream tomorrow, depending on how much time that is. Take care of yourself, Dad, and I will see you later. And then we got, so as I said, Mission Impossible. And, I'm going to be sitting down doing training day. I've got to record a lot of stuff for you guys. So, yeah, and Father's Day is coming up, guys. So the store is right on over there. It's a T-shirt, a mug, would look really good for Father's Day, or something cheaper to help me out is hitting that join button. It's $3 a month. Go to Starbucks and spend that in a heartbeat. So that's helpful. Yeah, and as I said, so I just did the Perfect Movies the other day, and that is up there now. It's The Dark Knight, and I just did the spoiler cast for Across the Spider-Verse. So if you haven't seen it, go see it, and then come back and watch it. I'd love to get your thoughts about a couple of things. Number one, did you like the film? I think you're going to. But number two, if you see it in IMAX, there have been some rumblings of sound problems. If you see it in IMAX, I'd like to know if you actually are experiencing sound problems, because I saw it in 2D and I didn't have any problems. And three, would you go back and see it again? and which one was the better of the two films. So, as I said, it was a little different today. It was a little longer today, but you know, I felt like it was necessary because we have so much stuff coming out in the next couple of months. So, all right. So that's it for me today. Do the 3 things you need to do: be safe, be careful, and have a great rest of the day. I am David Steele, and you have been watching Real Talks. Bye bye, guys.